lost my way, don't know how to return, and while I am wondering, time is passing by, and life won't stop for me. It's a river that flows endlessly. Leave a little light on, show me how to find home. It's the only place for me. Leave a little light on, help me to find home. If you don't, my fate is sealed. And then the night falls, and I become prey. Cat-like thoughts moving every way. I need to focus, get myself in control. The fear of loving and losing it all. And while I am worried, time is passing by, and life won't stop for me. It's a river that flows endlessly. Leave a little light on, show me how to find home. It's the only place for me. Leave a little light on, help me to find home. If you don't, my fate is sealed. Leave a little light on, leave a little light on, leave a little light on, leave a little light on. And while I am playing, time is passing by, and life won't stop for me. It's a river that flows endlessly. Leave a little light up, show me how to find home. It's the only place for me. Leave a little light up, help me to find home. If you don't, my fate is sealed. Leave a little light on, leave a little light on, leave a little light on, leave a little light on.
The musical magic of Hans York. Thank you, Hans. Beautiful. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Happy rainy day. You know, it's kind of nice to be able to say how much I'm enjoying the rain because, you know, after spending so many years in the Northwest, it was a little hard for me to say at times. But I'm very grateful for that we're experiencing some showers of blessings. Showers of blessings. Remember that old wonderful hymn, Showers of Blessings? So, was asked what my lesson title was going to be this week, and I really had trouble hearing a lesson title. And finally, I got something late on Friday, and when the title came to me in my meditation of Shining the Light. And so I was really kind of listening for what that was trying to say for me. And And it occurs to me that we're moving into a season and a time where it does actually become darker earlier, and the daylight doesn't last as long. And you don't notice as much here in Texas as you did in the Northwest. Julie and I were talking about this the other day, and we were remembering thinking about driving in the rain, and I was remembering we were talking about driving in the rain and realizing that it was like 4 o'clock, and in the Northwest at 4 o'clock this time of year, it's completely dark. And pretty close to it anyway, especially if it's raining. And then, you know, you get up in the morning you go to work in the dark, and then you come home in the dark. And so it's really very important while you're in that space that you allow a lot of light into your life. And I thought about that also, and I thought, well, that's true no matter where you are. It's a whole lot of letting light into your life. And one of the things that we really want to practice is not only letting light in, but letting light through. And we'll talk more about that as we go on. But I came across, this is actually a story that you guys have heard before, but I just love it. It's a story of a young soldier and his commanding officer. They got on a train together, and they were the only available seats on the train were across from a very attractive young lady who was traveling with her grandmother. And as the four engaged in conversation, it was obvious that the soldier and the young lady had a little connection there, and they were seeing each other and eyeing a little bit. And the grandmother was kind of a little stiff and stern about that. She wasn't too sure about that. And so, but suddenly the train went through a tunnel, and everything was dark. It was completely black, and immediately you hear two sounds. And one was the smack of a kiss, and followed by the whack of a slap. And as the four came back into the light, the grandmother thought, I can't believe he kissed my granddaughter, but I'm glad she gave him a slap that he deserved. And then the commanding officer thought, I don't blame the boy for kissing the girl, but I sure wish her aim was better. And then the young girl thought, I'm glad he kissed me, but I wish my grandmother hadn't slapped him for doing it. And as the young man sat there smiling, he was thinking, wow, I can't believe I just got to lay one on such a beautiful girl and slap my commanding officer at the same time. It's amazing what's revealed in the light. And it's amazing what we imagine and see when things seem dark, isn't it? In many ways, that really is one of the essence of what is dark, is that we oftentimes imagine things and they seem dark to us because we're not really in a place where we're looking and seeing clearly. We're not seeing through the ability to know the presence and to know the truth. We're imagining all kinds of possibilities. Anybody know what I'm talking about? We all have this wonderful, amazing gift of imagination. It is absolutely one of the most powerful creative forces that and gifts that we have, and yet oftentimes we are using that very special gift to focus our energy, our attention, our focus on everything that we think or are afraid might be, or imagining over and over again all the things that were before, and then assuming that everything else is going to be like that. Right? And in the process, we're basically misusing our gift of imagination. In fact, worry is the misuse of the gift of imagination, isn't it? So part of our waking up is to learn that we have this amazing gift and that we can use that gift. It's pivotal. We have a choice in the direction we're going to focus. And so part of our spiritual awakening is to begin to realize that we are using that gift all the time. We're using it whether we recognize it or not. And so we are given the opportunity by looking out in the world and also looking in at what's going on inside of us, is recognizing how we're using our spiritual gift of imagination. In Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 through 3, it says, "In the beginning God created the heavens and the earth was waste and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light." Let's talk a little bit about light. Metaphysically, light simply represents several things, but it represents intelligence. It can represent wisdom, but more than anything, it represents awareness. Awareness, simply being conscious and aware. And one of the valuable gifts that we have is using that gift of awareness, because the very gift of awareness in and of itself changes things. Do you realize that? And the more we are conscious and aware of what's not only what is and what's going on, but conscious and aware of what's going on in us, and simply shining light on that with our own awareness, we're in the very act of shifting and changing the energy that's involved. You see, one of the biggest challenges that we have is recognizing when we're in darkness. Darkness metaphysically represents what? Well, think about it. If light is awareness, what could darkness possibly be? Unawareness. Darkness is really that part of our being, our nature, that we're not noticing, or we're not paying attention to, or we're choosing not to look at. We're choosing not to see. That we are pushing into our subconscious level of mind so that we don't have to look at it, so that we're not willing to see it. This is really the essence of what darkness is, in all honesty, because the reality is everything that goes on inside of us is an energy, right? Everything that goes on in our consciousness and our lives is energy. And when we look at something in us or in the world and we resist that and push it away and try to hide from it, what happens is we push it down into our unconscious, and so we become unaware. And this is really what darkness is about. It's simply going into that tunnel. We're not aware. We're not aware of who's slapping who or who's kissing who, for that matter. Right? And so part of our waking up is to really notice and pay attention to all that's going on inside of us, and learn not to necessarily hide from or push things away, but let ourselves be conscious and aware of it. It doesn't mean that we necessarily have to accept it as a permanent state or a permanent part of our being. But if we are holding an energy and we're then not allowing ourselves to be conscious that we have that energy, then we're actually, in a real way, keeping ourselves stuck in that energy. You see, there's a flow that always is trying to happen. And if we're not allowing that flow to happen in some way, we're trying to block it, or Louise Hay calls it resistance, basically. If we're in resistance to what is, we still have that energy, but we're just holding it underneath the surface. You know, we talk about it in terms of an image that always comes to mind, and Louise Hay kind of presents something similar to this, is that it's like having a beach ball in the swimming pool and trying to sit on top of the beach ball. And we're trying to hold these things down and trying to not feel or experience them, or trying to not acknowledge them in some way. Well, you can do that for a little while, and it just seems like everything's fine. Here we are balancing on this beach ball. Can you imagine it now? But eventually you're going to wind up, it's going to throw you off balance, right? So everything that we're trying to hold underneath is going to throw us off balance in some way, and it's going to pop out somewhere, right? So where do you think it usually pops out? Now, the beach ball just pops out onto the surface of the water, but stuff that we are holding underneath, that we're not accepting, that we're not allowing ourselves to shine light upon, it shows up where? It shows up on the faces of everybody else in our world. Is that true? Yeah. So When we hold these energies down and we don't recognize things within ourselves, we're actually putting more energy into them in some ways, because we're putting a lot of energy into making sure that we don't have to see or feel that or experience it. Eckhart Tolle calls this basically the essence of our pain body. Our pain body. And so when we're not acknowledging those aspects of our nature and being, we push them down, and then they pop up all over the place. We pop up on coworkers, they pop up, anybody know what I'm talking about with that? Coworkers, you know? They pop up on family members' faces, you know? They pop up on the faces of parents, of even children, yeah. We project stuff out on our children even a lot of times. So, you know, Carl Jung called this projection, and it really is projecting out places within ourselves that we are choosing not to accept. Now, we all have this. We all have this, we all have this way of working, and we all do it to some extent. And part of what we're learning to do is to shift our consciousness in an energetic way, a thought way, a love way, a conscious way, so that we can look at and see the speck, as Jesus called it, in our own eye. He said, why do you see the board, or it's called a mote sometimes, or a log that's in others' eyes, but you don't see the speck? In your own eye, you see the speck in another's eye, but you've got a log in your own eye. Thank you. You know, the thing that really resonates for me when I think about that particular image that Jesus is giving us is that, think about the term oftentimes is, why do you not see the log that's in your own eye, but you're seeing the splinter that's in another's eye? He's actually more literal with that in many ways. And think about how that really reflects. A log is wood, a splinter is wood. They're really the same energy and same essence, kind of made out of the same stuff. So he's really saying, you know, what you're seeing out there as a log is really part of the same thing that's the splinter. I mean, the splinter is actually a part of the log. You follow me? I kind of got a little mixed up with that, but I think we got it straightened out. Does that make sense? So, when we see ourselves looking into the world, looking into life, looking into what's going on in our experiences, it's an awakening process. Sometimes we don't recognize it that way. Sometimes, because we are not paying attention, because we're not noticing, because we're not really listening and allowing ourselves to be conscious and aware, there are things that go on out here, and we think that those things that are going on out here are the real and the true, but we need to recognize that the seeds of all those things that are going on out here in some way are going on inside of us, and we want to begin to shift back into the energy of peace, of awareness, of well-being, that allows that energy then to resonate out into the world. Robert Sicking, in a wonderful book called Light for Our Age, says, light doesn't have to struggle with darkness to overcome it. It has only to shine. Light doesn't have to struggle with darkness to overcome it. We don't necessarily have to wrestle with that unconscious or that unawareness or that unacceptable place within ourselves, but we do need to shine light on it. This last week, one of our lessons, well, actually the week before, our lesson in the 4T program was taking an inventory. I know many of you know what I'm talking about when I say taking an inventory. Taking a personal inventory, and it's a very powerful spiritual thing to pay attention to and to notice. And in this program, the important thing is to take an inventory of all of our character defects, if you want to call it that, our faults, our flaws, but also take an inventory of our strengths and those things that really are our divine qualities, you might say. So we don't stay stuck in the energies of our faults, but we do have to recognize and acknowledge where we are limited, or limiting ourselves, or our thinking is limited, where our belief systems are limited, where we're not seeing clearly, or where we have patterns in our lives that are not functioning to our optimums. That makes sense? And one of the most important things we can do in doing this is, by the very act of doing it, what we're doing is we're shining light, aren't we? If we're doing it in a way that is open-hearted, is compassionate, is accepting, is recognizing ourselves in these little things that we don't like about ourselves, but then being compassionate with ourselves, even in the midst of that. You see, if we find a fault with ourselves, if we find a challenge in ourselves, and then we go into shame and frustration or guilt, what we're really doing is trying to change an energy of a lower vibration with another energy of a lower vibration, right? I talk about catabolic and anabolic energies. You guys may get tired of me talking about that. I know some people have said, okay, you need to use a different term, but they're terms that really I think that people can get, is that they're energies that are life depleting and they're energies that are life enhancing. And the very act of acknowledging that we have life depleting energies is a life enhancing energy. So the very energy of acknowledgement, but acknowledgement with an acceptance, not an acknowledgement with a resistance or a rejection. Acknowledgement with an acceptance. See, acceptance is a positive energy. Acknowledgement is a positive energy. It's an uplifting energy. And the very act that we moving into a consciousness of having faults and limitations and fears and doubts and all of those things, the more we can bring into the light, the more they can be transformed in the light and by the light. We have choices. We can make choices. We can choose differently. But if we're not allowing that to be, then they are running us in an unconscious way. Martha Spock, a wonderful Unity minister, was the director of Silent Unity for many, many years. I couldn't tell you how many years. But she wrote a wonderful book called Halfway Up the Mountain. She says, rather than praying for God to help us, let us open our hearts to His healing light. When we spread out before His light the hurts, the unhappiness, the resentments, the longings, the desires that have filled our heart, the light transforms them all. The light transforms them all. And so what she's saying is, certainly recognize where you are experiencing these things and feelings and these hurts and acknowledge them and let that awareness be part of the transformation process. She also goes on to say in another place, another book called Listen, Beloved, she says, what every person, whether he is consciously aware of it or not, wants most of all to do is to show forth more of God, to kindle the inner spark into a living light. So this is really at the heart of every one of our desires, ultimately. Do you realize that? I know some people have a desire for greater health. Some people have a desire for more finances. Some people have a desire for a new car. There's nothing wrong with that. Some people have a desire for a new house or new clothes. All of those things are okay. It's valuable. It's, you know, you kind of don't want to be walking around without clothes, right? So, especially in rainy weather like this, it gets cool. But the reality is, underneath each one of our desires, ultimately, is a desire to experience and express more of the divine as abundance, or as well-being, as safety, as security, as love, as we are all motivated on some level to experience and express the presence of God. We think it will come to us and we will experience that by having more money or a person to be in a relationship with. But we need to recognize that it's really the opposite that's true. That the more we are tuned into experiencing and expressing the divine light in and through us, then we become the magnet that draws to us the money, the new house, the cars, yes, the partner. It's really becoming more transparent in many ways. It's allowing something to work through us that vibrates on a level that's higher than what we've been tuning our energies into. We tune our energies into all of the things that we think we don't have, don't we? I bet you've got a whole list of the things that you don't have right now, don't you? We all do. We get these little lists of these things that we think we're supposed to have, that we want, we desire. And we put a lot of energy in not having them, don't we? And what we don't recognize is that unconsciously, that is in those dark places of our consciousness, unconsciously what we're doing is putting energy in all the things that we don't have, and the universe is saying, wow, they must really not want to have that. Can you see how that works? See, it's the law of attraction. It really is what you're putting your energy into is what you are drawing to you. So if you're putting a lot of energy into not having, the universe says, wow, here's a whole bunch more not having. The universe is amazingly generous that way. It really is, isn't it? And so part of our shift in consciousness is to shine the light. And shining the light is putting an awareness on that inner qualities of being and of having and of experiencing of well-being. I came across this wonderful story. As a young boy went with his parents touring in Europe one summer. Part of the tour included visits to the great old cathedrals of the past. Someone recently went to England and got to see a bunch of those nice, wonderful places. And one of our members, and she shared a lot of good thoughts and experiences with that. And so as he was visited all these different cathedrals, he was impressed with the massive stained glass windows, and was just really blown away by the beauty of some of these, and the other disciples and the saints that stood in those windows, and the halls through the beautiful stained glass windows. And so on returning home, he was asked by one of his teachers about his experience and what it was like for him, and he said, he thought about the thing that was most valuable to him was just seeing those amazing stained glass windows. And it just really spoke to him in so many ways. And he said, I love the sense of awe and the hugeness of who God must be. And I love the stained glass windows with their images of the saints. And the teacher asked, well, how do you know which ones were the saints? And he said, well, it was easy. That's the one that the lights came through. See, I love that image. It's the one the lights came through. You see, if we want more light in our lives, we can go into a dark room and we can flip a switch. But the switch that we're talking about is a switch inside of you. And it comes not to you, it comes through you. If you want to experience more light in life, let yourself be the light. Be open to finding some way to share an awareness of life and of light in whatever's going on for you. In Psalms 19:8, it says, "The commands of the Lord are radiant, giving light to the eyes." Giving light to the eyes. And in Matthew 6:22, "Even in darkness, light dawns for the upright, and for those who are gracious and compassionate and righteous." Let me say that again, because this is really valuable, I think. "Even in darkness, light dawns for the upright, and for those who are gracious and compassionate and righteous." So let's talk a little bit about what it means to be upright. Now, unfortunately, there's been a misunderstanding what it means to be upright. And it's been really taught in a lot of places that upright means that somehow you are perfect and that you are better than everybody else. There's a lot of emphasis on all those who are not upright. Is that correct? But upright simply means that you're in alignment, that you're moving into a place where you're more aligned with the truth of your being, you're more aligned with the wholeness of who and what you are are aligned with the essence of your nature. And the way that you're able to do that, of course, is through graciousness and compassion. Being upright really is being gracious and compassionate. And I'm going to suggest to you that that is one of the most important things you can do when you are shining light into your own darkness. See, we have a tendency to look at our shortcomings, and we try to put even more darkness there by judging ourselves, being critical. You know that little critical voice? Remember we talked last week about the insane roommate that they talk about in the Untethered Soul? We all know of that insane roommate, right? And the insane roommate will absolutely berate you up one side and down the other for having some kind of fault or shortcoming. But the light of the soul speaks clearly with compassion and grace. Louise Hay teaches a very simple principle for healing. A very simple principle. And that's love for the self. The truth of the matter is, if we're not being compassionate and loving with, number one, with ourselves, there's no way for us to truly be compassionate with others. If we're not willing to be honoring of who and what we are, and the truth of who and what we are, and accepting and forgiving of who and what we are, to be gracious and be compassionate with who and what we are, we're not going to be able to extend that to the others. Jesus said, "The eye is the lamp of the body, and if your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light." So how we are seeing and what we are seeing with each other in life, in what's going on in us and what's going on through us, is one of the most valuable gifts that we can give, not only to ourselves, but to each other. Loving ourselves, loving that being that we are, loving that precious child of God that you are, is your greatest gift to the world. Do you know that? Julie and I have had this wonderful, amazing blessing of being able to hold our precious grandchild. And most of you have seen her in pictures by now, if not all of you. And the thing I will share with you is that you are just as precious as any newborn child. Can you know that for yourself? Are you willing? Are you willing to accept that? Even with, as one of my friends says, warts and all, are you willing to accept that you are precious that way? It's one of the greatest gifts that you can give to our world, is loving yourself. So one of my favorite little things is a saying from Rumi that actually came to me this morning, reminded me of it this morning. Thank you, God. Rumi says, "This being human is a guest house. Every morning, this new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all. Treat each guest honorably. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. I've had an opportunity to acknowledge and recognize a number of guests that I, in the past, have not been too happy with, and have tried and invite out of my life in many ways. You know, tried to kick them out lots of times, and you know, I just realize the more I do that, I'm just trying to use the same energy to get rid of the things I don't like as the very things that I don't like. The only way to really invite a guest to be a different kind of experience is to be compassionate, to be gracious, in many ways to embrace, not necessarily to own or to become like that, but to recognize that there is something more in each and every one of us. And so the more we can tune into shining that light within ourselves, from ourselves, through ourselves, it becomes something that we radiate out into the world. The greatest gift you have to give to this world is the love you have for who and what you are. Pretty simple, huh? So that's our homework. Let's move into our meditation time. So actually, let's have a song and then we'll do a meditation, shall we?
Listen to the moon when her light is on you. You can hear her voice, soon you'll know it's true. Listen to the moon. Listen to the moon when her light is on you. You can hear her voice, soon you'll know it's true. Listen to the moon.
So let's move into that place of stillness. Move into a comfortable place, allowing the breath to flow in and out. And as you breathe, just let your awareness be open, allowing, receptive, moving into a full energy of acknowledgement and acceptance. If thoughts come into your awareness, just notice them. Acknowledge and accept. If some thought of the past comes into your awareness, just notice and acknowledge and accept. Some thought of the future comes into your awareness. Just notice, acknowledge, and accept. Allow a flow of awareness and acceptance in this still, quiet time. In the time of silence. And if you find there's something that comes to you that is hard to accept, just accept yourself for having that challenge. Accepting who and what you are now. And silently say to yourself, I'm willing to accept. I'm willing to allow. I'm willing. Accept and release. Take another nice deep breath. Let your awareness begin to slowly come back into this room. Take one more nice deep breath and stretch a little bit. And just give thanks for the gift of light flowing through you, as you. And so it is. Amen.